Hey there, I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. As many of our listeners know, I lead the Techstars Web3 Accelerator, investing in entrepreneurs building in Web3 and enabling the next wave of growth in the decentralized internet and in tokenized economies. Applications are now open for our spring 2025 class, so check out techstars.com/accelerators/web3 to apply. Luca Franchi is the co-founder and CEO of Ambient, a decentralized physical infrastructure network, or DePIN, at the leading edge of decentralized environmental monitoring, harnessing the power of its vast sensor network to deliver real-time, actionable environmental data. By utilizing distributed technologies and a community-focused participation model, Ambient not only enhances environmental awareness, but also drives impactful change across the globe. Before Luca Franchi co-founded Ambient at the start of 2024, he was an entrepreneurial executive with 20 plus years of experience driving innovation, strategic relationships, and growth for startups and large corporates in the US and Europe, most notably with Sky, where he represented Sky Group CTO's office in Silicon Valley, leading growth and innovation strategies and sourcing tech investment for Sky's $150 million plus venture arm. In this episode, Luca and I riff on his career journey and decision to found Ambient earlier this year, the rapid evolution of blockchain into a foundational technology enabling decentralized networks, the challenges with getting Ambient off the ground, how Ambient works and the role of the AmbiGo app, DePIN networks in general and monetization of supply versus demand, navigating the funding landscape, and what it takes to approach the founder's journey with longevity in mind. All right here on Money Never Sleeps. But listen, to figure out the path that I wanted to go down with you for this chat, I kind of cataloged your last 23 years or so of your career, leading up to your founding of Ambient, all right, at the start of this year. So things like marketing strategist, product manager, country manager, business developer, nearly 10 years with Sky in the UK and Silicon Valley, and senior roles in growth, disruptive tech, innovation, and investments, like loads of stuff here. Then I saw that you went back to London from Silicon Valley as an independent consultant. And that's where things like Web3 and blockchain started popping up. I kind of saw the trends unfolding there. Can you walk us through the story, set the scene for us on the collective influences, perhaps, that led to your decision to build Ambient?
The reality is that after some 10 years initially of startups in my early career and another 10 plus large corporates, I came back to London wanting a bit more of a challenge, right? Especially after 7 years in Silicon Valley, working with so many talented entrepreneurs across some truly exciting ventures. I ended up leaving Sky shortly after my son was born, with a view to, on one side, spend more time with the family, but also to create a bit more of a personal manifesto about what I wanted to do next, the areas that I wanted to focus on next. And Web3 and blockchain more generally was a space that I had been involved in since 2016, originally trying to convince my executives at the time that we should be investing in decentralized applications across a number of telco and media use cases. But 2016 was far too early for many corporates. And climate tech was actually another area that I was drawn to, that beyond the corporate VC tech investments that I had worked on, I had also been a scout for Sky's Ocean Ventures Fund and had worked across a number of sustainability businesses, really driving significant change. And that felt like a positive place to be contributing to next, right? So the merging of the two, Web3 and climate tech, was something that I was already particularly interested in. And more generally, I wanted to jump back in an environment where I could roll up my sleeves again, wear a lot of different hats, and back to that energy of my startup days. And considering my, of course, experience, I first started to work with funds and their portcos, initially as growth advisor, and helping founders and their teams identify how they could best take their business to the next level. And eventually, this time last year, actually, I was introduced to Borderless Capital by my old friend Jamie Finn, co-founder of Securitize. We went to school together at Babson, actually. And that was to discuss one of Borderless's investments that was underperforming, with an opportunity to help turn it around. And well, the rest, as they say, is history.
All right. Interesting that one of those routes in was through Securitized. They're definitely an OG
That's right.
in this space. And I had good chats with Carlos Domingo a couple
Nice.
of times,
Okay.
Jamie's
I
co-founder.
worked with Carlos at Telefonica as well. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Definitely. Shout out to Carlos. And
Yes.
it's been a little while since he and I chatted, but definitely respect and recognize the journey they've been on and the persistence and resilience to get to this point where in their space, tokenization has been on the tips of people's tongues. It was back in 2017, 2018 in the financial markets, and all excited and all frothy. And then it went quiet for a while, and now it's back because the technology has just moved so much faster. And that's been one of my observations, is that when we see these integrations of blockchain back into real world, 2 years ago, even when some of these projects were being proposed to me, I'm like, these things just aren't going to work. But it's moved so fast. The problems that are being solved and that I'm seeing now, that people are saying, listen, look how we're doing this. They're solving problems only 6 months ago that people were like, oh, they'd never be able to do that with blockchain. But the development is just going so fast.
It's great to see that maturity coming into play in the industry, right? And to finally see those use cases, those real world use cases being worked on, and to prove the value of course, decentralized and blockchain and all of the things that we've been shouting about for so long.
Absolutely. Did anyone help you with the decision, Luca, to go in this direction?
Lots of people did and
Okay.
still do, right? But it was going back to that idea that I wanted to do something new. I needed to challenge myself, and I wanted to get back into rolling out my sleeves. It all kind of worked out that way through the folks that I ended up networking with and meeting. And of course, everybody still is helping along that journey.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. It is definitely a big decision, and one that I remember well. And
One of course, that I had to make with my wife, first of all.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. In that back in 2016, when I decided to go in this direction, that I remember there's a recruiter that called me that was at his wit's end because he had found me a big job and was going to get a big fee out of it. And I'm driving through Donnybrook in Dublin. And I picked up the phone and he said, Pete, I've got the final offer here. What do you think? And I said, sorry, no, not going to do it. And he was so frustrated that I think he just hung up on me. And I like punched my fist into the air in joy and excitement and nearly put my fist right through the roof of the car. So, I'm not taking the job, right? So I remember that. I remember that well.
Yeah, it's okay to say no if it doesn't feel right. But when it all kind of works out and, the right components are coming together, you have that gut instinct ultimately to say, you know what, let's do this.
Exactly. Get out there into the wild.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward, given how much has happened in the last 10 months, things such as obviously founding Ambient in January, acquiring Planet Watch, the sensor network, in May of this year with the 25,000 sensors across 20 countries. And I know that you've made some adjustments there. Starting to move from the Algorand blockchain to Solana, raising your $2 million seed round led by Borderless Capital, and planning for your token generation event, your TGE. With all of that, how did you go about building and integrating the team and the teams together and getting everyone moving in the right direction with all of this happening at the same time in the first 10 months effectively of this year?
Yeah, no, it's definitely kept us busy. First of all, Ambient is a decentralized network of air quality sensors. That all started with Planet Watch and the plan that I put forward to Borderless and a group of investors to salvage the network and launch it as part of a bigger vision, right? We had to act quickly, setting the foundation, the core developer, taking over critical infrastructure, onboarding core team members, as well as identifying new contributors, all the while examining the assets we had acquired to determine the best way forward. And it's like inheriting a ball of spaghetti and making sense of it initially, right? So it took some time. And of course, we were a bit quiet as we were kind of figuring out what we needed to do next. But we quickly raised our round from a group of investors, of course, Borderless, Solana Ventures. So we knew where we wanted to land for our TGE. But before we could get there, we had our work cut out for ourselves. So we had to re-architect the Planet Watch platform, and start the development journey, which is no small feat in itself as a migration. And of course, we had to redesign tokenomics. We had to create a migration and incentive plan for legacy network participants to get them to follow us on this journey. We had to engage, of course, with the community to share our plans, to deliver a clear roadmap and to stick to it as well, because of the history that was behind this project. And also to ask for their patience as we work things through. And we had to focus on the air quality data that the network was capturing and how we could commercialize it, because that was one of the things that the previous project was not able to do. So we had to start weather industry discussions to qualify its value, to start to drive demand for the network as one of the first things that we really needed to capture. And more recently, we've started to announce our enterprise deployments with commercial centers, with hotels, with public parks, and more. But after all of this, we're still a seed stage startup faced with many other challenges and surprises along the way, as you can imagine, as I'm sure you well know. But as a seed stage startup that's actually at a significant inflection point, with the launch of the new network later this month, with demand in the pipeline from a handful of weather market players, a clear plan to significantly increase our sensor supply and coverage in the coming months to get even more data and relevance for the demand side. So I'm very excited about where we are, where we've come from, and what we're building for the future of Ambient.
Can you tell us about Ambient in your own words, Luca, and how it all works?
Yeah. And again, Ambient today is a decentralized network of air quality sensors. Participants acquire a range of sensors we sell, manufactured by third parties, for either outdoor or indoor quality monitoring. And by connecting these sensors to our network and sending us their local air quality data, we provide rewards in the form of our token. And then look to sell that data and drive value back into the network by acquiring or burning tokens, sharing those revenues with the owners of the sensors where that data originally came from, and other forms of investments in the growth of the network. And while today Ambient is focused exclusively on air quality, and again, in increasing our global coverage to drive those commercial sales on the data side, over time, we also intend to expand to other environmental sensors and complementary metrics, from noise and light pollution to pollen and allergens and more, all under this wider environmental umbrella of services we will be providing to data buyers and ESG-driven enterprises.
Okay. I've recently set up the AmbiGo app on my phone. Tell us about the AmbiGo app and how that works for an everyday user of that.
So that's part of our hybrid DePIN approach. We believe there's a great opportunity, of course, to onboard users more quickly as part of the ecosystem that we're building through the progressive web app that we built with AmbiGo. That will, of course, evolve into more of a data capture input for the network. And that gives us both a path to eventual sensor ownership, but also an opportunity for folks to onboard to start to help us build a map of the environmental places that we all visit every day, to identify where we should be installing some of these sensors across retail spaces in the future, and naturally to help us start to create some of those environmental surveys that give us a better view of light conditions or noise conditions, and over time to actually use the microphone and the camera for that data capture. But today it's mostly survey driven. So I also see it as a promotional tool ahead of TGE and a quick onboarding way for folks to join.
Absolutely.
And of course, to be rewarded as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to try it out for the first time. So after we're done recording, Luca, I'm going down to Beacon Hospital and I need to have my ears checked out. All these years of podcasting and having headphones in my ears has done something, because my GP, he had a look at something, said, those are the narrowest ear canals I've ever seen. So something is happening in there. So I'm going down to the Beacon Hospital. I'm going to take out the AmbiGo app. What can I expect to be doing when I take that out?
You can expect to see a map of the points, the points of interest, the venues around you. You can check into those places as you get closer, as you're inside the location. You can answer a few questions, surveys around how's the ambient, how's the noise, how's the light. And that's all taken into consideration from a timing perspective naturally. And then we build a view over time of what the data that we capture from those places looks like. And then you'll be rewarded for answering those questions. There's a certain amount of points for each activity. You can refer your friends as well accordingly. And this is just the start of the journey because we have a number of other updates and native versions of this application and abilities to create greater engagement and stickiness as part of that. And also to expose the data that is being captured so you can then make a choice of, oh, I want to go to this place because it may be more quiet right now. Or I want to go to this other place because there's a lot of natural light. And of course, with an overlay of our air quality data as well. So you'll be able to see what's happening in your area.
Absolutely. I get that. And one of the Techstars grads from 2021 that didn't go through my program, but they went through the program run by a guy called Martin Olchik in Torino. And they're called NATIX, and they are a DePIN, Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Network, like Ambient. And you mount your phone onto your dashboard and you turn on the NATIX app, and it records not in video where you're driving, but it records the obstructions that it sees, the obstacles in the road, the things that you should be aware of. I don't need to be aware of them because I can see the road perfectly fine, but it records the obstructions, and that all of that data is very important to the future of autonomous vehicles. Okay. And so it's recording, generating tons and tons of data. I'm something ranked like 3,000 in Europe for drivers using the NATIX app, right? There's, I think, a couple 100,000 users using this now, drivers using this now. Being able to bootstrap and pull together a network on the consumer side is one thing. But in order to then take all that data that you've accumulated and be able to sell that on a B2B basis is a different thing altogether. Yep. So you can create the supply of data, but you need to also create the demand of data. Do you think that the experience levels of the founders of these businesses will influence the ability of these decentralized physical infrastructure networks to then bring on board the partners and the buyers of this data in order to monetize everything that they built?
The reality is that in DePIN, and more generally in blockchain, but specifically in DePIN, we're building multiple businesses at the same time. And it takes different sort of experiences as well as part of that to be able to sell in enterprises or more traditional businesses. You're not just building technology for technology's sake, as many other projects have done, but you're specifically looking to create enterprise value and needing to capture huge amounts of data to make sense of them, to analyze them, even if you're selling just raw data as we're starting to, just because we know that there's customers out there that will. But you need to bring on board the folks that have that experience. So we brought on board somebody from AccuWeather, and it's been instrumental. Of course, his network, all the way to how do we structure the APIs, legal agreements. So founders may not have that background or specific to the industry that they're targeting, but they clearly need to bring on the expertise and know-how, because we're already building 3 or 4 different businesses all at the same time. And of course, on one side, you have venture and equity rounds that are targeting one thing, and on the other, you have tokens that are targeting another sort of type of growth. And it's important to, I think, identify the gaps and to know what you don't know and to bring in the right folks.
And then Ambient fitting in with the overall DePIN narrative. That's a big part of the overall Web3 narrative right now. Why do you think that DePIN is important to the world and how it will transition to a more decentralized internet?
It's great that DePIN is on everybody's lips. It's exciting for the space. I think it's important because ultimately we're disrupting the creation of infrastructure through incentives and community participation. And there are so many use cases. You mentioned one, from connectivity to mobility to geolocation to mapping, spatial computing, and naturally environmental monitoring. And these are all projects that everyday people can start to use today, and with some simple actions, earn rewards and contribute to these networks. So the accessibility is very exciting. It's very high, and it gets a wider participation and an opportunity for the community to benefit as opposed to single players. And Ambient, as part of that, is clearly focused on building the world's largest decentralized network of environmental sensors and ambient data, but with a mission to really become the leading environmental platform globally, and not just from a Web3 perspective, but powered by our community, driven by the economic incentives naturally that we've created, and dictated by also the commercial value that we're able to drive and generate for the network. So, and because of that, also hybrid DePIN approach, we're able to experiment across the board on both sides and help grow the network, help increase its exposure, and work with other DePIN projects as well to make sure that we support one another, because at the end of the day, we're all building for the growth of the market, the awareness of it, the maturity, its maturity. So going back to your previous point about helping one another make sense of the opportunities and challenges that we're facing. And then at the end of the day, it's also a small market. It's a small set of founders and teams. And I think we all understand the challenges that we're facing and that we're here in this together. So it's great that it's such an open space and we're able to build together as part of this.
And it's a lot more grown up too, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I like it. But to me, like I said, it feels a lot more grown up in that these 3, 4, 5 years ago use cases that I was seeing for blockchain that were going to be very difficult to implement in anything other than being a private blockchain, which is just the same as a private database, without any connectivity to public and to the people that can really help to drive the use of this. I've seen it develop over the last number of years, and I'm a lot more comfortable with where this is going now. Yeah. It's a good narrative to continue to progress down, particularly coming from my background, which had been very much on the B2B side back in my days in traditional finance.
Yeah, no, I see it as really the embodiment of this maturity in the space after all these experiments. And it's great that you have opportunities that are targeting real world opportunities and examples and use cases. Going back to, we were talking about Securitize earlier in the journey that they had to take to, of course, go after the tokenization of assets. In a similar way, you're seeing projects in DePIN or RWA ultimately being able to strike that balance of tokenizing these opportunities, creating the right incentive networks, and disrupting some of the more traditional players, if not cooperating with them. So it's great that also you are seeing more traditional businesses working with this industry now.
Back to the $2 million seed round, Luca. How'd you go about raising the round?
Borderless, first of all, was instrumental because of, not just because of their history with Planet Watch, but also because of their deep involvement and leadership in DePIN and strength of their network. Then so Ambient was incubated out of Borderless practically, with a fantastic level of support and insights and advisory. So introductions to other DePIN projects and other investors naturally. So we quickly built a proposal of what we wanted to do with the Planet Watch assets and the bigger vision that we had under this environmental umbrella of products and services. And we pitched that to a number of key investors across the business. And there was great buy-in around that. Also, partly because as much as there may be other DePINs doing weather and other bits of this sort of data, nobody's squarely focused on environmental use cases. And we've managed to carve a niche for ourselves as part of that, being the first and only environmental DePIN on Solana, and one of the only others across other chains as well. So, and not just, by the way, about building a DePIN project to what I had envisioned and what I had pitched originally to them as part of this rescue operation, but also with the focus on building a sustainable business in blockchain, which goes back to the other things that we just talked about.
Definitely. And what do you think made the difference for Borderless in them leading the round? Obviously, they incubated Ambient, but was there a journey with them that got things to the point where they said, okay, yes, we'll lead the round?
Oh, 100%. It was months in the making, especially with my initial involvement in figuring out a way for, do we take over Planet Watch? Do we do an asset purchase? You know, how we cut that pie to make it as easy and quick for us to rescue the network, to repurpose the assets in the community and the token so that also investors could be made good, meaning the community participants, and how could we build something bigger? So it took a significant amount of work in shaping that story and narrative, which of course I was leading and taking forward along with Borderless's help, but then also pitching to other investors. And once we got that initial attraction and nod from a number of the other key investors, that came into the picture, we were quick to say, okay, now we need to raise the round, because we knew that it was going to be a long journey on redeveloping the technology stack and creating a migration path, and then eventually going to TGE, but also targeting a lot of the enterprise opportunities and data sales naturally that we needed to.
And thinking back to your role with Sky, going even further back, that especially in Silicon Valley, you must have been moving pretty fast, okay, to be able to keep progressing through your career, gaining the experiences you needed to eventually break free back into the wild. Now, as a startup founder, how much faster do you have to move in order to survive?
Multiple times faster.
Okay.
It's a completely different game, and one that I knew I was getting myself into, and that's what I wanted. It's not for everyone, so my advice would be careful what you wish for. But it takes a significant amount of work, which means that you really need to focus on what you're passionate about and solving challenges that drive you, because you're going to be at this every day, every hour of the day, thinking about what you need to do next and working long hours. And that's fine, because it's not work. It's something that you're building. Of course, you surround yourself with folks that possibly have done something similar or can help you along that journey, but you're going to be working long hours and difficult problems that will likely keep you awake on some nights, and everything always takes longer than you think or expect. But at the end of the day, no task is too small and no mountain too high as part of this. And I sincerely hope that others enjoy it as much as I do, but that you need to clearly go after something that you're passionate about, that you want to build, and that you can sink your teeth into.
I was listening to a podcast this morning about Rockefeller, and one of the things that Rockefeller said was, build your business now as if it will still be here in 50 years' time, which means give it that incredibly strong foundation. Any insights into how you have done that in 10 months?
Well, I think it's whatever it is. A lot of people procrastinate or delay decisions. I think whatever it is, just do it. Jump right in, get started. You'll figure out the rest step by step. You never have the full picture. And actually, a lot of the times you end up pivoting anyway once the picture changes. But it's important to, yes, build for the longevity of the business, to build something that's going to stay and to set the right foundations. But from day one, you think you have an idea. That idea may change. So whatever it is, just if you're passionate about it and you want to figure it out, start building and the rest will come.
Yeah. The jump out of the airplane and learn to knit the parachute on the way down. When I said this to Luis Ramirez from Mawari a couple of weeks ago in the podcast that we did, he said, yes, there's that, but there's also the fact that he had to learn Japanese
yes,
while he was doing it. Which is
no easy task.
Yes, jump out of the airplane, learn to knit the parachute on the way down. And then when you safely land into the water, you're in with sharks, basically, is his experience of having to also learn Japanese. Just jump right in and swim with the sharks. Yeah. So,
which is, again, going back to this, doing something that you love, but also setting an exciting stage, because we're in it quite deep, and you just have to make sense of it. You just have to swim. And that's what I think many of us live for.
Absolutely. If you had a time machine and you could leap ahead 20 years into the future and ask your older and wiser self, Luca, for a bit of advice, what do you think your older and wiser self would say, given that your older and wiser self has gone through already what you're going to be going through over the next 20 years?
Yeah, I think on one side, we're probably always so caught up in the day-to-day, working, as we were saying, long hours, building, getting stuff done. But it's incredibly exciting, but we also owe it to ourselves to have moments of whatever you want to call it, self-care, whether that means taking a walk in the park nearby or taking a few minutes exercising, meditating, expressing gratitude, spending time with the family, whatever it is. But yeah, I also, of course, don't always follow those same guidelines, considering everything that we have on the plate. But life is too short to have or to live in regret. So it's important to, I think, make the time and make it worth your while for the things that you won't be able to get back, whether that's your health or some balance or having dinner with my son and wife every night. So there's things that you cannot compromise on, I think.
Definitely. I've always believed that happiness breeds influence. If you're a generally happy person, that people will generally follow your lead.
Yeah.
And that you're always going to be meeting people along the way, but that happiness in terms of, people say work-life balance. Like you said, it's life. When you're following your passion and your pursuits, it's life. And call it work, call it what you want, but that you need to, like Mr. Miyagi said, your whole life is balance, right? And finding that balance between those things that bring you joy and happiness in your professional pursuits and those things that bring you joy and happiness with your friends, with your family, with your hobbies, with things you do with groups of people, with things you do by yourself, whatever that may be. So I'm right there with you.
And nobody else is going to do that for you. So
you got to do it yourself. It's so critical to find a position of balance in your own health, with your own skeletal system, with your own physiology and diet and everything. And it breeds back into being able to have good conversations, to be able to build relationships, to be able to just do things and get on with your day. And I've been putting a lot of work into that myself recently, and just getting stronger at the core. And just because, well, life extension is another big topic that I think a lot of VC money is going into these days. What I'm hearing is that it's not necessarily just all on the pure technology side. It's the integration of technology with biology, and how can we actually extend the life cycle of the human race.
100%. I mean, everybody wants to do more, wants to live longer, but at the end of the day, we still cannot neglect what we have, and that we need to take care of ourselves so that we can keep going at 150 miles an hour. And 30 minutes on a bike is not going to kill anybody, hopefully.
Definitely. The place that I round out this podcast with everybody that I talk to, Luca, that I bring onto Money Never Sleeps, is this one, which is, what is one thing that people would not expect to know about you?
Most people don't know that I didn't learn to speak English until I was 12 years old. And my name maybe gives it away that I'm Italian and whatnot. Speaking of learning how to swim, being thrown the deep end and learning how to swim, I was thrown into a local school when I moved to Miami with my family. And that definitely toughened me up, especially coming from a small town in Italy. But everybody, of course, thought that also I would play football. And I'm possibly the only Italian that doesn't watch football or any other sports for that matter, aside from major sporting events. But I did grow up watching Formula One or MotoGP, and I do have a love and history of owning all sorts of motorcycles and taking them on long driving tours from London across Europe. So anyway, I guess that's a bunch of things about me.
Okay, all right. You didn't learn English till you were 12. You don't like football, or you're not obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And you take motorcycle trips across Europe. Do you ever read, I just started this, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
Yeah. It's a great book. Yeah, I read that a while back.
Okay. So like I said, just started that. Why did I start that? It might have been referenced in Jay-Z's autobiography.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I picked up and read Jay-Z's autobiography because I listened to the podcast episode of Founders that David Senra does.
Okay.
Where he does basically a hyper glorified 40-hour research preparation packed to be able to do a 1-hour episode book report effectively. Wow. But he brings in so many different insights and crossover points from other conversations he's had.
Yeah, I bet. I'll have to get that link from you.
Yep, I will send it on to you. Finally, Luca, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you and or learn more about Ambient?
So get in touch with me. I'm Lucky Luca on Twitter. So that's easy enough. Follow Ambient Network on Twitter as well, or follow us on LinkedIn. Look forward to seeing everybody on the network.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Luca. It's been great having you on the show.
Thank you, Pete. Pleasure.
That does it for this week, folks. Thanks to Luca Franchi for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. Check out the show notes on moneyneversleeps.ie for all of the relevant links to learn more about Luca and Ambient. If you like what you heard, please leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, as it helps others to find the show. Also, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I'm an early-stage startup investor focused on where fintech meets crypto and crypto meets Web3, and I lead the Techstars Web3 Accelerator. Applications are open now for our spring 2025 class, so check us out on techstars.com/accelerators/web3 to apply. There are plenty of links in the show notes on moneyneversleeps.ie on how to get in touch, so don't hesitate to reach out. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!